On the 14th night of the Kurukshetra War, the ancient laws of combat were shattered. Darkness had swallowed the battlefield, yet the slaughter did not cease. In the flickering torchlight, the Pandavas faced a terror far greater than defeat. They faced absolute annihilation. The destiny of the righteous hung by the thinnest of threads. Arjuna, the greatest archer of his age, was marked for certain death. His rival, Karna, stood ready with the Vasavi Shakti, a divine weapon granted by the king of gods. It was a weapon that could not miss, could not be stopped, and could be used only once. As long as Karna held it, Arjuna was a dead man walking. Destiny, however, would not be decided by kings or gods that night. It would be decided by a warrior born of two worlds, rejected by both, yet willing to save them all. A half-demon prince named Ghatotkacha. This is the story of the outsider who threw himself upon the gears of fate to save a family that had kept him at arm's length. The story begins years before the war drums sounded, in the terrifying silence of the Kamyaka forest. The Pandavas were refugees then, stripped of their kingdom and hiding in the domain of man-eaters. It was a place where iron laws held no power, and humans were merely prey. Here, Bhima stood guard while his family slept. In this darkness, Hidimbi, a Rakshasi princess, made a choice that defied her nature. Sent to kill the intruders, she instead fell in love with Bhima's strength and nobility. She betrayed her own clan to save him, choosing an impossible love over the laws of her people. It was a union forged in blood and secrecy. Their marriage was a contract of convenience, bound by a cruel expiration date. The Pandavas agreed to the union on one condition: Bhima would stay only until a son was born. Once the line was secured, he would leave. Hidimbi accepted these harsh terms with quiet dignity, knowing her happiness would be fleeting. From this forbidden union, Ghatotkacha was born. A child of magic and might, he grew from infant to warrior in a matter of days. He bore the blood of kings and the power of demons, yet he belonged to neither world. When the time came, Bhima left as promised, leaving his son behind in the shadows of the forest. Before his father walked away, Ghatotkacha made a single, defining vow: "Call me, and I will come." For years, he lived as the secret nephew, the monster in the woods waiting for a summons from the palaces he was never invited to enter. He mastered the arts of illusion, preparing for a war he hoped would prove his worth. When the Great War finally began, the call came. Ghatotkacha did not hesitate. He brought his Rakshas army and his life to the feet of his uncles. The Pandavas had their divine weapons and their righteous cause, but they did not realize that their true salvation would come from the son they had left behind in the wild. The war dragged on until that fateful 14th night. Fueled by rage and grief over the death of Jayadratha, the rules of engagement were abandoned. The battle continued past sunset. For the human soldiers, this was a nightmare of exhaustion and blindness. But for Ghatotkacha, the night was not a hindrance, it was a weapon. Rakshas magic is bound to the darkness. As the sun vanished, Ghatotkacha's powers surged to their peak. He was no longer just a warrior, he was a force of nature. He took to the skies, raining down stones and trees upon the enemy, turning the battlefield into a landscape of supernatural terror. He unleashed the power of Maya, absolute illusion. The Kaurava soldiers saw headless armies charging from the blackness. They saw the earth opening up to swallow them. Hardened veterans who had never known fear broke ranks and fled, screaming. Ghatotkacha was dismantling the enemy army not with arrows, but with pure psychological horror. Amidst the chaos, Krishna watched with cold calculation. He saw the chessboard clearly. He knew that as long as Karna possessed the Vasavi Shakti, the war was lost. Krishna realized he needed a sacrifice, a piece dangerous enough to force Karna's hand, yet expendable enough to lose to save the king. Krishna drove the chariot, urging Ghatotkacha to unleash every ounce of his power. He pushed the half demon to become an unstoppable threat, a crisis that the Kauravas could not ignore. It was a ruthless strategy, make the son of Bhima so terrifying that the enemy would have no choice but to use their ultimate weapon. The plan worked. The Kaurava army was on the brink of total collapse. Duryodhan, watching his legions dissolve in panic, screamed at his greatest warrior. He demanded that Karna use the Shakti immediately. "Kill this demon," he pleaded, "or we all die tonight. Save us from this monster." Karna stood frozen in a tragic dilemma. He had saved the Shakti for a lifetime, hoarding it for his final duel with Arjuna. To use it now was to forfeit his life's ambition. But his duty to his friend outweighed his desire for glory. With a scream of frustration that tore through his soul, Karna made his choice. He raised the weapon that could kill only once. The missile flared with the light of 1,000 suns, banishing the shadows of the night. Karna aimed not at his rival, Arjuna, but at the son of Bhima. He hurled the Shakti, and the weapon of the gods flew unerringly toward its target. The Shakti struck Ghatotkacha, piercing his magic and his heart. He knew the end had come. Yet, even in death, the warrior instinct did not fade. With his final breath, he used his magic to expand his body to a colossal size, turning his own corpse into a final weapon against his enemies. He crashed down upon the Kaurava ranks like a falling mountain, crushing thousands of soldiers, elephants, and chariots beneath his massive weight. In his dying moment, he took an entire division of the enemy with him into the dark. The earth shook, and then a terrible silence fell over Kurukshetra. Bhima wept for the son he had barely known. But Krishna celebrated, for the shield was broken. The weapon meant for Arjuna was gone, spent on the outcast. Ghatotkacha had never sat on a throne, but he died the savior of the Pandav cause. He was the uncelebrated hero who gave everything for a family that had only ever asked him to die for them. Subscribe now and step deeper into the Mahabharata's most powerful untold truths.